has been so hot in the UK recently, with temperatures exceeding over 35 degrees, and as someone with over 200 houseplants, keeping them alive has been a little bit challenging. So what I'm going to show you today is a less hands-on a way of watering your plants and keeping them fertilized throughout the really hot summer months. I'm going to be honest, I do not have the time to water 200 plants a day every day, especially in different parts of the house, and so I like to pot them up into really large pots whenever I can so that they retain as much moisture as possible. But of course they still need watering. So the way I have done this is I've gone onto Amazon, I think you can get these on eBay, and get a mini irrigation system that is USB powered, and it has a battery in there and also a pump. I'll put up on the screen now the one that I've got. And if you get them in the off season, so like in the winter, they are a bit more affordable. They're around 30 quid, some of them even more, some of them less. I went for one with quite a few good reviews. However, the first one of these that I did get did stop after maybe 4 or 5 months of use, but I contacted the seller and they sent me a replacement one. So yeah, that might be because we've got really hard water here and it might have clogged up. So if you do have really hard water, it might be worth using distilled water or filtered water, or when you don't think you'll need to use the system again, run a lime scale removing tablet in the water, not with your plants in it, of course. That would not be good. Take all the system out and run some lime scale removing detergent through it, just to make sure everything's all clear, and then you'll be good to go. So this is what I got, and I'll show you what's in the box. A lot of these water pumps come with similar spec, so I'm just going to take you through this one, and it should be very similar depending on what brand you get. This is the main charge control point where you set how often you're watering. It'll work the pump for you and pull the water from your water source into the system. The next thing we have are these drippers. There were loads in here and they are the right size for the tubing, a charging cable and a user manual. To actually put the system together, you will need a used bucket, a spare bucket, any bucket you want. I'm using this one that I used to mix up paint in, and you just clean it out and make sure it's all nice and clean. This has just got stains on it. And then you drill a hole in the lid, which is roughly the same size as the tubing you were given. Then you thread the tubing through the hole and think about a nice spot where you want to place it, preferably high up, because then the gravity helps the water disperse throughout the system. The pump has to work twice as hard if it's lower down, and it might not get in and water all of your plants. Because these things, they don't have too much power, it's not plugged into the mains, it's battery operated, so you just got to bear that in mind. While the box is charging, you can set up the rest of the system. One of the first things you're going to want to do is work out how much tubing you want in the bucket and how much you need. So it's got to attach to the charging box, and then the other end attaches to the filter. Once you've worked out the right length of tubing you'll need, take off the filter and thread the tube through the hole in the bucket, and then reattach the filter in the bucket. This is because you won't be able to put the filter through the hole, it's too big. Now I'm deciding to hide my bucket in this nice rattan, I don't know if it's rattan or wicker, I don't know. This basket I got from TK Maxx. You can find them in HomeSense. They're pretty cheap and it's just a nice accessory. It goes with the aesthetic of my room. It's also high up, so that will help with the gravity. And I can hook the charge box on the side of the rattan basket. The next thing you need to do is measure the next distance from the charging box to the plant you want to water first. And because it's bendy, I'm not using a ruler or anything because there's really no need. You just connect all the tubing up and then draw it across and see where it stops. And that's pretty much what there is to it. Once you've figured out the length of your tubing, you're going to want to attach one of these drippers to it, and you're also going to want to find one of these T-hook things. To attach the dripper to the T-hook, we need to cut some of the tubing to match the size, and sometimes the tubing can be quite stiff, so you can heat up the tubing by putting in some warm water or using a heat gun, and then it should just slide on quite easily. Once the T connector and the dripper are hooked up, you can start hooking on the rest of your tubing. And it should look something like this. Then attach it all up to the main charging point and pop them in the soil. And that's all there is to it. You've just got to repeat this step quite a few times. So measuring out the length of it, cutting the length of it, and then adding in the T connector and the dripper, and keep it going. This irrigation is in series, so there might be less pressure than if you did it in parallel, but it's one of the easiest ways to not have to think about loads and loads of different lines. Also, you use less tubing. That makes a difference as well. But if you're struggling for water pressure and perhaps the last plants on the end of the tubing weren't receiving enough water, then you could just add in some more lines and make it into a parallel circuit. You also get these little connectors as well, just in case you cut one of the tubings too short, you can attach more tubing onto it. So you pretty much got all you need in a box. Now at this time of year, it's important to remember that your houseplants are in their growing phase and they're going to need a lot more nutrition and a lot more watering, especially in the hotter months, than they would previously throughout the year. And in fact, during the winter, I don't feed my houseplants at all really if they're not actively growing, if they've gone dormant especially not. So I'm actually going to put some fertilizer in the water because I want to keep these plants healthy. They're in container pots, so they can't get any additional nutrients from branching their roots out into the soil. And a lot of them are in peat-free compost. And if you don't know anything about peat-free, it's that it leaches nutrients quite easily and it doesn't retain as much moisture. So these plants will need to be watered more frequently and they will need to have feed in their water. So the blue substance you can see here is actually Miracle Grow. It's water soluble, so I can just add it to the water in the right quantities and it will feed my plants. I no longer use Miracle Grow really. I have been using Nurture System for over a year and then using liquid gold leaf to condition the soil every now and again, and I've seen a massive difference when using this, so that's one thing I would recommend doing differently. This next part might be quite a challenge if you're new to plants and collecting plants, and that's because we're setting a timer for how much and how frequently. So this is 100 mils, so we're going to change it to around 150 I think, and it is going every 12 hours here because it's very warm, but your plants might act differently and you might want to change that to every 3 days, every 4 days. Sometimes I put them on every 10 days, even in the spring when it's warming up, because they just don't need it. And that's when you just have to stick your finger in the soil. If it's dry, increase the frequency. If you think they're not getting enough water in one go and it keeps drying out, then you need to increase the amount of water that you're feeding that plant. And then your plants should thrive. I might insert some B-roll footage of what these plants look like 5 years later because they're pretty impressive and they've been through so much, but honestly this system has kept them alive for weeks, for months when I haven't been able to be there to look after them. It's a lifesaver during heat waves, during really hot weather, because I don't have to worry about them. They're all absolutely fine. What's great about having the feed constantly throughout is your plants actually develop more resistance to disease and pests. They're better protected to defend themselves against them, so I have less issues with pests. Although I still get pests, they don't do nearly as much damage or harm to my plants as they used to do. So that's something I really, really strongly recommend. Please remember to feed your plants. Now, if you don't have an end stopper like I didn't here, I actually put just a dripper in the end of the tube so that it went into a pot as the last stop on its journey and didn't spill out everywhere. That's how you can do it. And just make sure to test it and see if all the plants are getting water, how much. Sometimes there might be blockages along the way, it depends on your soil type as well. And make sure it's all working fine. One thing to bear in mind is if you have smaller plants and you're putting them on the system and they're in pots and containers, maybe with holes at the bottom, that you have a saucer that can retain the amount of excess water that smaller plant might receive if it's on a more frequent timer or for a longer time, because then that plant will become more saturated more quickly and it will need that excess water taken away from it. And if it can't absorb any more water, it's just going to leak out everywhere and you'll get an absolute mess.
Basically that's it. That's how I set up my water system for my room. So the pros about using this method is that you don't have to water every day. You don't have to worry about watering those big plants. You don't have to worry about lugging up water, creating a mess. You can fertilise them really easily. You don't have to remember using water-soluble fertiliser. Downside is that during the summer or the spring, they can get quite pricey online, on Amazon and stuff. The price goes up. And you know, not everyone can afford even 30 quid for your plants, but I guess if you are an avid grower and you are buying lots of rare plants, this is quite a good investment to invest in. There are more higher quality ones out there on the market. They're a lot more substantial and a lot more powerful, but they are quite out of my price range. I was looking for something that was quite more affordable and very portable, and this one does the job. Ideally, I would want black tubing so that algae doesn't decide to grow and have a field day inside it, but we'll just keep an eye on it, and if there are, you can always clean it. Another con might be, depending on how frequently you set the water to go, it might need charging every few days. So mine's every 12 hours, so maybe 3 or 4 days time I'll try and charge it again, but I have a super long cable to do that, so I don't have to worry about unattaching stuff, and it just reaches, it plugs from my laptop right up onto the shelf, so I don't have to move everything, and it charges pretty easily too. If you have any questions or think you've got a better system, please let me know, because I'm always looking for new ideas and new ways to water plants effectively. In the meantime, happy planting, and I'll see you next time.